There have been some pretty big shakeups in this past month's Gacha Spending Report, January 2024. Am I worried about some of these changes? I don't know. Let's go take a look and let's find out. I think some of the changes in spending though are definitely going to surprise you. I want to start down here in the red zone, at the very bottom here of the list, kind of see how things are going and kind of give my take on some of them. We are looking at just the consolidated revenue reports, but if we think it's valuable, we can switch over to breaking down the different regions if we need to. By that, I mean, splitting up global versus Japan. Now, the tower sensor reports only include Android and iOS statistics from global and Japanese regions. I separate those two because they're often categorized separately, but this doesn't give us all of the statistics on the CN side, so that can also sometimes give us some insight into what's been going on. So starting here at the bottom, we can see our bottom 5. We've got Girls Frontline having a bit of an uptick, only about 10K, probably because Girls Frontline 2 is coming very soon. NeuroCloud having a bit of a dip as well, down to 115,000. I don't know if I've ever even heard of this. Tact OP Symphony down to 100,000. That's pretty low. And oh my gosh, Artery Gear down to 39,000, and Hegan Ruthil down to 25,000. If memory serves, Hegan Ruthil is a Korean game. So I just wonder who's keeping this game alive. Like, is it bigger in CN than I realize that like Hegan Ruthil is still going on? Because like, it pulled in $26,000, 26, not 206,000, not 126,000. It pulled in $26,000 last month. And again, that's not a judgment on the game itself. I played Hegan Ruthil. I enjoyed it for what it was when it first launched, but that is just like legitimately shocking to me that that is where that game is currently sitting. Like I have no idea why that's the case. Okay, jumping up the list here a little bit. Tower of Fantasy went from 600 to 500,000. Interesting. I'm surprised they're still pulling in those kind of numbers. Maybe it's because the collaboration that's going to be going on, people are still sticking with it. Like $100,000 drop in that kind of like ratio isn't that crazy. That's still fairly business as usual, we'll call it. Snowbreak Containment Zone definitely did have a bit of an uptick there from 300 to 500,000. They dropped more skins, more swimsuit skins. Snowbreak Containment Zone, if you've missed it, has really been diving into the fan service now for all of their characters and providing other skins for them just to like, keep, I think, people more invested in the game. They weren't going that heavy with it on launch, but I wonder if that's kind of like their effort into saving the game. That very well could be the case. Guardian Tales is a fantastic game that honestly, I think should be doing better. I wish it was doing better. It overall is just like a solid mobile game experience. If you've played some of the classic Legend of Zelda games, not like the old school ones, but like the Four Swords or Link Between Worlds, it gives a good retro feel to it. The characters are done well, and I wish it was doing better. I really do. I played a lot out of that game on launch. Probably played it for like a year straight after launch, and then just kind of fell off on it. But oh man, it's a great game. If you haven't had a chance, I would definitely suggest giving Guardian Tales a good try. Now, here's something I definitely want to talk about. For the first time, maybe even since launch of Aethergazer, they have had an equal month in terms of revenue with Punishing Gray Raven, which I know a lot of people have been seeing a lot of comparison between in terms of being competition. Both of them, between the global and JP servers, are pulling in about 700,000 this past month, which is pretty impressive for Aethergazer and fairly on par and par for the course on Punishing Gray Raven. Punishing Gray Raven last month came down from 1 million between the two, and that's because on the global side, previously we got Lee Hyperreal, who is a huge unit for the Fire meta team, so there was definitely an uptick when he released. But that still can look like a pretty significant drop, and that's because, in case you don't know and you're not deeply invested into Punishing Gray Raven like I am, then you'd know that there's a free unit that just got released. Ayla Kaleido, who is an awesome ice amplifier, great from a design, gameplay perspective, and she's a powerful unit, just got released. And so you would think, well, why didn't that get boosted? Well, she's free. She's a farmable unit that you can get in the dorm system of Punishing Gray Raven. So of course there was a massive drop. There's going to be some people who are just impulsive, want to put some money into it so they can get her right away. But I guarantee you the vast majority of players are willing to just save their black cards and farm her up for free. So probably a bit of an uptick, maybe to still get her cub and her weapon. But something to remember with Punishing Gray Raven though, is that we're going to see an absolutely massive swing in Punishing Gray Raven for February's report because Lucia Crimson Weave is going to be dropping. And as of the time of recording, 19 days from now, I believe it's going to be February 22nd is going to be the release of Lucia Crimson Weave. And most gacha spending happens at the beginning of like new characters and drops when that takes place. So I expect February to still capture up a lot of that revenue, and I expect a big bump from Punishing Grey Raven at that point, that's for sure. But still, shout out to Aethergazer, having a great month. Good job for you guys. Limbus Company having a bit of an uptick from 500 to 800,000. I'm not entirely sure why that would be. That's a pretty big jump. If you have any reasons why you think that might have taken place on Limbus Company, I'd be interested to know in the comments down below. Eversoul, massive jump from 400,000 to 1 million. Shout out to Eversoul. That was a game as well I played for quite a while on launch. That interesting to see how that has had a huge uptick there. Brown Dust is still kind of cruising, 1.3 to 1.4 million, which is very interesting to see. I'm not totally surprised. It's also kind of a Coomer game is what a lot of people would call it. You know, very heavy on the fan service, like Azure Lane levels of fan service, maybe even more down bad, to be honest. Like some of them are pretty extreme. Devil May Cry Peak of Combat, one of its initial months, coming out at 1.6 million. This is one, though, to be honest, I feel like a lot of people jumped in for the release of the game and it's got a lot of hype around the release. But a lot of what I've been hearing from people is that a lot of people are not satisfied with the monetization in the game, with some of the characters and the combat in the game, and it left a lot of people feeling kind of disappointed. I'm just trying to share what I've heard. I'm not making that judgment myself. I've not actually had a chance to get a hands-on experience with it as of yet, but I know some people in my community have been talking about it and are fairly disappointed with what's been delivered so far. So if you disagree or have more thoughts about that, let me know in the comments down below. Reverse 1999 having a bit of a drop off. Wondering if that's because maybe the Tooth Fairy wasn't as successful as people were hoping for. Seemed like a really interesting character. Reverse 1999 seems like one of those games that has a really interesting universe and a really interesting concept, but I know from a gameplay perspective, doesn't really appeal to me. So I wonder if that's kind of what's going on with a lot of other people. But I mean, look, let's be real here. They still pulled in 1.6 million. Devil May Cry on its release also pulled in 1.6 million. Just because it's red, it's still 1.6 million. So I'm not trying to harp on Reverse 1999 too much. That's still very impressive. Honkai Impact 3rd is doing Honkai Impact 3rd things. Epic 7 having a pretty significant drop, almost a 50% drop, down from 3 million to 1.8 million, which is a little bit surprising. I got to admit something. I did actually start playing Epic 7 again. I started kind of, catching up on the different story modes and grinding out some of the characters. I've just been having fun unlocking the free versions of the characters. They're kind of free ascensions, just grinding those out. It's just been, I don't know, fun. That is very much being a casual side thing for me though. I've an established enough account on Epic 7 that I don't feel like I need to be in that daily grind anymore. Ecocalypse, Scarlet Covenant still having a pretty good run so far. I've been seeing a lot of advertisements for this, but I've not given it a try. But getting hyper specific here on the 1.9 million and 60,000, so fairly steady, which is great to see from Ecocalypse players. Jumping up the list a little bit, Azure Lane having a bit of a dip from 5.7 million to 3.1, and Final Fantasy Ever Crisis from 4.3 million to 3.7 million. I mean, look, still very respectable numbers to see there, so very interesting to see. Memento Mori, kind of static at a 5 million there. A game that's, from my understanding, still really big in Japan. I've looked at kind of the combat for that game. It does not appeal to me whatsoever. The art is very cool in Memento Mori, but overall, I don't know. That's one I genuinely don't understand. Black Clover M, massive, absolute massive fall off after its initial launch. Again, I've been hearing it's a little bit of increasing disappointment around that game, just some murmurs and sentiment, not necessarily a definitive statement, but I don't know. It'll be interesting to track what happens with Black Clover going on over the next little while. Jumping up the list here, we've got Arc Knights having a massive jump from 3.3 million all the way up to almost 9 million, 8.9 million. That's absolutely insane. I have no idea as to why it made that jump. That's crazy. Blue Archive also almost completely doubling its revenue. Now that, I believe, is they dropped summer skins on that one as well. I think I saw some advertisements of that going around. That, again, that's unsurprising to me as to why that happens. Just most gacha gamers are degenerates. Let's just call a spade a spade. So if you throw in some summer skins, different things like that, people want them, people buy them. I generally don't, but there's a lot of people that do. That's why they add them. Okay, now we're going to be moving into the top 5. This is what a lot of people are interested to see. What are the top 5 performing games of this month? A lot of people interested to see where does Genshin, Honkai Star Rail, some of the other games, where did they all stack up in January of 2024? At number 4, we still have Uma Musume Pretty Derby. Japan just absolutely carrying this game, pulling out 20 million in revenue, which is absolutely insane that's just coming out there. This is a game that again is exclusive to Japan. It has not had a global release and it's still pulling in those kind of numbers. Now, frankly, I don't know if it would have the same kind of success globally. I feel like it's kind of like a cultural the phenomenon a little bit, the Uma Musume, but yeah, it's one of those games, it's one of those gacha games that nobody's ever heard of outside of this list. In the number 4 spot, we've got Honkai Star Rail having a bit of a significant drop from 28 million to 20 million. However, I don't think this is a surprise whatsoever. I don't think it's any indication of anything surrounding the game. The reason for the drop, Dr. Ratio came, Dr. Ratio was free. Even when Honkai Star Rail releases an absolutely cracked free unit into the game for all of its players, it still pulled in $20 million, guys. It still pulled in $20 million. So I think we're gonna see a massive swing in this. With Honkai Star Rail, Penacony is gonna be dropping in the next week or so, coming out swinging with Black Swan, and then followed by Sparkle. Now, Sparkle's not gonna fall into February. By the time Black Swan leaves, it will be probably the beginning of March, but I still think they're gonna have a massive uptick in revenue when that takes place. So, you know, I'm calling my shot right now. I see Honkai Star Rail taking the top, maybe even, you know, the second top spot from Gacha Spending come next month's report. In spot number 3, we've got Fate Grand Order. Fate Grand Order just doing Fate Grand Order things, staying at a steady 27 million. And then finally, our top number 1 and number 2 spots, we have Genshin Impact still taking number 1 and Nikke still holding strong in the top 3, taking the second spot. I still don't know why. It's just so funny to me seeing Nikke always landing in that top 3. It's kind of exciting to see, and to some degree, they deserve it. Nikke has treated their fans really well. I know some people don't like the frequency at which new characters get released. I understand why some people don't like that, but Nikke, I would also argue, is a very generous game in terms of how many free pulls they give out. Their rates for actually pulling their SSR characters is fairly generous, and so overall does a lot for their community that I think it deserves kind of the respect that it gets in terms of, like, you know, its revenue and support. Now, I know not everybody loves the pity system. It's a pretty high pity system, but with increased drop rates on characters, having an increased pity, I don't know, I'm kind of more okay with that. But regardless, congrats Nikke and Genshin Impact. Here you are, top number 1 spot. Now that one, again, doesn't come as a major surprise to me because Navia got released towards the end of January in Genshin Impact, and she ended up being an absolutely cracked unit for Geo, ended up being huge for the Spiral Abyss because, you know, Genshin likes to cater the Spiral Abyss to the debuting unit to make them feel even better and give you more incentive to get them. And they did a great job with that character. We're not gonna talk more about OYO versus Genshin Impact, but at the very least, I see why they pulled out the revenues that they did. Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail are usually always fighting for that top spot, so comes at no surprise. But again, mark my words, come February, I see Honkai Star Rail taking the top spot with Black Swan and Sparkle. And if it's not them and it's like a top 2 spot, definitely when Acheron drops. When Acheron drops, for sure, Honkai Star Rail is going to take that, and it's going to be great. But that's it on the spending report. Let me know what of the numbers here surprised you. What games did I maybe not mention in this video that you found to be really surprising in terms of the revenue that was pulled? And again, if you have any insight into any of the games that I did mention, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. If you made it this far in the video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate that. And as always, a special shout out to the patrons of this YouTube channel. You guys are the ones who make everything that I do here possible. Thank you so much for doing that. To our producer level patron Bela, and also over to Real Estate Boy. Thank you so much. If you'd like to join on the Patreon, link in the description down below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.